The restaurant was buzzing that Friday evening, glasses clinking, soft jazz echoing from the corner, conversations weaving together in a tapestry of laughter and shallow chatter. It was the kind of place where wealth dressed itself in tailored suits and expensive perfume, where every table became a stage for someone trying to prove they belonged. And in the middle of it all, she moved quietly, a young black waitress named Aaliyah. She wasn't just serving plates. She was carrying stories. Every step, every polite smile, every carefully measured "yes, sir," and "of course, ma'am," was a reminder of the sacrifices she had made. Aaliyah was 26, a single mother, studying late nights while working long shifts, hoping that the tips she collected might one day add up to something more than survival. To most of the people dining there, she was invisible, just another face in the uniform. But that night, someone decided to make her the center of attention. At the largest table sat a man whose voice carried louder than anyone else's. He wasn't just a guest. He was the kind of man who entered a room expecting it to bend around him. Richard Carmichael, a millionaire businessman whose name floated around in local news and glossy magazines. Silver cufflinks, polished shoes, the confidence of someone who believed money was not just power, but entitlement. And beside him, his friends, men just like him, laughing too loudly, their egos fed by every sip of whiskey. When Aaliyah approached their table with a tray of drinks, Richard leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing on her. He watched her move, not with admiration, but with the kind of stare that strips a person of dignity. And then, with a smirk that curled like smoke, he said it loud enough for the entire table to hear, "Why don't you put that tray down and dance for us?" The laughter from his companions erupted instantly, echoing across the restaurant like a cruel drumbeat. The words hung in the air, sharp, humiliating, cutting through the warmth of the jazz. For a split second, time slowed. Forks paused mid-air. Conversations broke off. Eyes turned toward their table. Aaliyah froze. Her hands trembled as she balanced the tray, the glasses rattling faintly. She had been insulted before. She knew what it felt like to be underestimated, ignored, dismissed. But this was different. This was public. This was designed to break her. And yet, she didn't move. She didn't give him what he wanted. Instead, she placed the tray on their table with a steady grace, straightened her back, and locked her eyes on his. There was no smile, no submission, just quiet fire. "Sir," she said, her voice calm, controlled, almost disarming. "I'm here to serve you your meal, not your entertainment." For a heartbeat, silence pressed down on the room. His smirk faltered, just slightly. But then his friends roared again, egging him on, their laughter trying to cover the discomfort that had spread across the other tables. Richard leaned forward, lowering his voice, but still loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Don't get smart with me. People like you should know their place." That sentence cut deeper than the first. People like you. Not just about her skin, about the long history of disrespect and degradation that weighed heavy on shoulders like hers. And that's when something inside Aaliyah shifted. She could have walked away. She could have stayed silent, as so many workers are forced to do to keep their jobs. But, in that moment, with every eye in the restaurant on her, she decided silence would only give him victory. She took one slow breath, steadying herself, then spoke with a strength that seemed to rise from generations before her. "My place," she said, her voice clear, resonant, "is wherever I choose to stand. And tonight, I stand here, with dignity. You can laugh if you want, but you will not take that from me." The laughter at the table stumbled, faltered. The men shifted uncomfortably, glancing at one another as if unsure how to respond. And the rest of the restaurant? Utter silence. Strangers who had never noticed her before were now holding their breath, waiting. This was the moment that changed everything. Because sometimes it's not the noise that shakes people awake. It's the silence that follows courage. One woman sitting at a nearby table whispered under her breath, "Good for her." A man across the room slowly set down his fork, watching with something like respect in his eyes. Even the jazz player, In the corner had stopped, his fingers frozen on the keys, as if the music itself refused to interrupt. Richard tried to recover, tried to wave it off with a laugh, but his voice cracked slightly. "Relax, it was just a joke," he muttered, though no one seemed to be laughing anymore. The spotlight he thought he had turned on Aaliyah was now glaring on him, exposing something uglier than he ever intended to show. And that's where the story takes its first turn. Because what Aaliyah didn't know yet, what no one in the restaurant knew, was that someone had been recording. At a table just a few feet away, a young woman had quietly lifted her phone, hit record, and captured every word. The demand, the insult, Aaliyah's response, all of it. And in the digital world we live in, where truth travels faster than whispers, that video was about to become a storm. But before we get to what happened when the world saw that clip, pause for just a second and think, if you had been in that room, what would you have done? Would you have looked away, the way so many did at first, or would you have stood up? It's a question worth asking yourself, because silence is powerful, but so is action. And if you're watching this right now, I want you to remember, stories like Aaliyah's don't just happen in restaurants or in faraway cities. They happen in neighborhoods, schools, workplaces, everywhere. If you believe dignity matters, if you believe respect is not negotiable, then stay with this story. Don't click away. Because what happens next left everyone speechless. Pause, rehook for engagement. And while you're here, if you've ever felt that fire inside when someone tried to put you down, drop a comment below, share your story. You'll be surprised how many people will stand with you, because Aaliyah's night wasn't over yet. That single moment, that single act of courage, was about to ripple further than she ever imagined. And Richard Carmichael, the millionaire, who thought money could buy humiliation, was about to learn that dignity isn't for sale. By the time Aaliyah clocked out that night, she tried to push the encounter from her mind. She went home, tucked her little daughter into bed, and told herself it was just another ugly incident in a long line of them. She had stood her ground, and that was enough. Or so she thought. But while she slept, the world was already watching. The video had found its way from one phone to another, then onto social media, and by morning, it had exploded. The clip was short, just 40 seconds. Richard's voice clear as crystal, ordering her to dance, her calm refusal, and then her words, the ones that carried like thunder wrapped in velvet. "My place is wherever I choose to stand." It was more than just a response. It was a declaration, and people everywhere felt it in their bones. By sunrise, the video had millions of views. Hashtags formed around her name. Strangers wrote paragraphs about how her dignity gave them courage. Black mothers shared it with their daughters, saying, "This is how you carry yourself." People who had faced discrimination in boardrooms, classrooms, and grocery stores commented, "She spoke for all of us." And just as fast, the attention turned on Richard Carmichael. The internet had no mercy. Screenshots of him at gala events, articles about his business, even old quotes he had made in interviews. All of it was dug up and dissected. People didn't just see a millionaire anymore. They saw a man who had used his wealth as a weapon, a man who thought humiliation was entertainment. By the second day, reporters were outside his office. His company's PR team released a statement calling it a misunderstanding, claiming he had only been joking, but the world wasn't laughing. Because the truth was on video, and dignity doesn't lie. Meanwhile, Aaliyah's life had transformed overnight. When she walked into the restaurant that evening, she wasn't invisible anymore. Customers whispered her name, co-workers hugged her, strangers left notes of encouragement under their checks. Some even came in just to meet her, to say, "Thank you." At first, she didn't know what to do with all the attention. She was just a waitress, a student, a mother trying to make ends meet. She hadn't set out to become a symbol. And yet, whether she wanted it or not, she had become a voice. And with that voice came responsibility. On the third day, she received an invitation to appear on a national talk show. Nervous but determined, she agreed. Sitting under the studio lights, she told her story with the same calm strength she had shown in the restaurant. "I didn't respond to him because I wanted to go viral," she said. "I responded because I wanted my daughter, and every young person who looks like me, to know that dignity is not negotiable. No one gets to strip it from you. Not for money, not for power, not for anything." The audience erupted in applause. People at home felt the words like a mirror reflecting their own unspoken battles. But the story didn't end there. Because Richard Carmichael, humiliated, cornered, exposed, decided to fight back. He arranged his own press conference, standing stiff behind a podium, insisting he had been treated unfairly. He called the reaction mob justice, painting himself as a victim of overreaction. But the cracks in his voice betrayed him. The cameras caught the sweat on his brow, the hesitation in his eyes, and every denial only seemed to deepen the silence that followed his name. The truth was clear. He had tried to break someone with less power than him, and instead he had broken his own reputation. And here's the moment where the story deepened even further. Because Aaliyah, despite the anger many urged her to hold, chose a different path. She was offered opportunities to sue, to drag his name further into the mud, to claim financial compensation. Lawyers reached out, promising her millions, but she declined. When asked why, her answers silenced even her critics. "I don't need his money. If I take that, the story becomes about wealth again, about what can be bought and sold. I want the story to remain about dignity. That's priceless." Those words shook the narrative into something larger than just a viral clip. She wasn't chasing revenge. She was setting a standard. And here's where you, the listener, the viewer, sitting behind your screen right now, need to pause again and ask yourself, would I have had the courage to say no? Would I have chosen dignity over a payday? It's easy to imagine what you might do in theory, but in the heat of the moment, in the face of humiliation, few find the strength to rise the way she did. If her story has moved you so far, don't just scroll past. Drop a comment, share this video, because spreading dignity is as important as protecting it. Now, let me tell you how this story truly ended. 2 weeks later, the restaurant organized a community night. The owners, embarrassed by the incident but proud of Aaliyah, decided to dedicate an evening to celebrating staff members and the people who worked tirelessly behind the scenes. Local musicians played, speeches were given, and for once the spotlight shined not on the wealthy guests, but on the workers. Aaliyah stood at the microphone, nervous but glowing. She looked out at the packed room, families, neighbors, strangers, who had traveled from out of town just to be there. And with her daughter by her side, she said words that would be remembered long after the night was over. "We live in a world that tells us our value depends on our wealth, our skin, our status. But every single one of us carries something no one can strip away: our dignity. Protect it, cherish it, stand on it. Because when you do, even the loudest voices fall silent." The applause rose like thunder, rolling through the walls, shaking the very ground. People stood on their feet, tears in their eyes. For once, the room wasn't filled with laughter at someone's expense. It was filled with respect, unity, and a reminder of what it means to be human. And Richard Carmichael? He never came back to that restaurant again. His businesses began to crumble, deals fell apart, partnerships dissolved. Because respect, once lost, is almost impossible to buy back. But Aaliyah, she didn't just survive that night, she soared. She was offered scholarships to finish her education, invitations, to speak at universities, even a book deal. But more than any of that, she gave her daughter something greater than financial security. She gave her an example of what it looks like to stand tall in the face of humiliation, to turn silence into strength, to remind the world that dignity is not a performance, it is a birthright. And that's why this story matters. Not because it went viral, not because it ruined a millionaire, but because it proved something timeless. When you stand for your dignity, the world can't help but take notice. So if you're still here, listening, feeling that lump in your throat, let this be your reminder. Share this story, pass it on, because someone, somewhere, might need the courage to hear it right now. And when you do, don't just watch. Be part of it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Not for me, not for Aliyah, but for the next person scrolling by who might need to see they're not alone. Because in the end, dignity doesn't whisper. It echoes. And on that night, in that restaurant, a millionaire learned the hardest truth of all. Money can silence a room for a moment, but true dignity will silence it forever.